Over the years, the popularity of growing cut flowers seems to have exploded. More and more home gardeners are planting seeds and transforming grassy areas of their backyards into beautiful flower-filled spaces. And the trend has given rise to a community of individuals not only nurturing their love for blooms, but also turning it into a thriving business. You know, so many people are selling their blooms to their local communities, to people who have fallen in love with the uniqueness and vibrancy that only local cut flowers can provide. And it's sort of hard not to get sucked into this whole world of flower farming. I mean, there's so much beauty that comes with it. And for a lot of us, I think we enjoy the opportunity that flowers allow, you know, for us to sort of disconnect and unplug from our very plugged-in lives. But with more and more small-scale growers popping up, the big question you're likely wondering is it too late to start a flower farm? Honestly, is the market too saturated with everyone jumping on the cut flower bandwagon? Or can you realistically start a flower farm in 2024 and still find success? I know that's a big question to answer, and in fairness, this video might be a little long because of that, but I hope with the information I'm about to share in this video that you'll gain some clarity on this topic, and more importantly, you'll feel confident in whether or not you should chase your flower farming dreams this year. So if you're ready to dive in, let's get right into it. It's natural when you're starting something new, like growing flowers for the first time, that you want to know what you're up against. What are your odds of actually finding success? Well, when you look at the floral industry as a whole, you know, from a broad perspective, things look promising. Now, don't quote me on the specific statistics, but when you look at market trends for cut flowers and you see the projected growth of the industry, and you couple that with the fact that like 80% of cut flowers sold in the US are actually imported, then sure, just from the simple fact that we have more demand than supply, you can see how there's plenty of room for new flower growers to enter the market. But when you're not focused on the broader scope of the floral industry, and instead you're looking at your own unique circumstances, you're probably wondering, like, is there even room for you to get started if there's already like 6 other flower farms operating within your local community? What happens then? For a lot of us just getting started, we fear entering a crowded market because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we can imagine there being a fixed amount of business available. You know, there's only so many people buying flowers in my community, and so the more flower farms there are, the harder it's going to be to succeed. We see success as sort of a pie. And when we view success in this way, then of course, competition feels very real and threatening. Because if someone else is succeeding, then that means there's less pie available for me. So I'm going to help open your mind to why I believe that this idea isn't true, because I really want you to know that if your dream is to run and own your own flower farm, there is room for you at the table, even if you feel like your local community is already saturated. The most common piece of the puzzle that I think new flower growers get wrong is that they think they are selling flowers. Let me be clear, what you're getting paid to give isn't what you are actually selling. That sounds crazy, right? Sure, when you sell a bouquet of flowers to someone, there's a transaction that occurs. Let's say that I have a bouquet of flowers that I'm selling for $20. Obviously, I want the $20 more than I want the bouquet of flowers. Now, on the opposite side, I may have a friend who has $20 to purchase that bouquet. And in this scenario, she wants the bouquet more than she wants the $20. It's easy for us to look at this example and assume that the person who winds up with the $20 is the winner. Now, this is also partly why some of us struggle to price our flowers accordingly, because we see the buyer as $20 poor. You know, my friend, now she has less than when the transaction started. And when we fall into this logic, what we're forgetting is that the flowers have value. My friend isn't losing $20, rather she's gaining the value that she perceives those flowers to hold, which for her can be any number of things. Maybe the value she sees in those flowers is time or convenience. Instead of having to grow flowers herself, she can bypass the hassle of it, all by simply buying what someone else has grown. She puts very little time into the transaction, yet she still walks away with what she wants, which is flowers. Or maybe those flowers provide a therapeutic value to her. It's not so much the flowers that she's after, it's a sense of calm or relaxation those flowers provide, which ultimately betters her overall emotional state. So knowing this information then, what we're really selling is a solution to someone else's needs or emotions. So knowing this information, that what we're really selling is a solution to someone else's needs or emotions, that can help us have a more abundant perception of the local flower market. Because here's the kicker with all of this. Value is something that you create. It's not a thing that simply exists and you have to collect and hoard it. So if value is something that is created, then how can we ever truly run out of it? When you get out of the mindset of I'm selling a product and instead get into the mindset of I'm solving a problem, it's that change in perspective that helps you see how flower farms can exist in abundance without saturating the market. We're all just serving and solving different problems. Now, these problems that we solve, they may change and evolve as our flower farm grows and evolves, but the product itself, what's at the heart of our business, the flowers, they tend to stay the same. This is why similar businesses like McDonald's and maybe Texas Roadhouse can coexist. Both restaurants may have hamburgers on their menu, yet their presence doesn't take away from one another because they're solving vastly different problems. You know, for McDonald's, a hamburger is about convenience. It's about saving time, maybe saving money. Whereas Texas Roadhouse is geared towards an experience. The focus is on having a sit-down meal. It's a luxury of having someone prepare a meal for you, of being able to enjoy that meal in an atmosphere other than your car or your home. And that's a mindset that you have to start looking at when you look at your flower farm. I think what a lot of flower farmers do is they get started in their flower farming journey and they don't get traction right away, and it's easy to blame the high competition within their local community as a reason why, they're not finding success. But the real reason why so many flower farms struggle is, one, because they're not properly communicating the value which they offer to a receptive audience, to an audience that has that problem which they are able to solve, or two, because they themselves are not clear on what sort of value they provide. It's really easy for us to assume that all flower farms, just because we're all selling flowers, that we're all the same. And the longer that I'm in this flower farming world, the more clearly I see how that is simply not true. I mean, if you take a look at how Two Sisters Flower Farm has changed over the years, you can see how we as one singular flower farm haven't even operated the same from year to year. Starting out, I primarily sold bouquets of flowers through a roadside farm stand. In the years that followed, I sold our flowers wholesale to a local florist. I then got back into retail and sold the bulk of our flowers through a CSA. And then most recently, our focus has been on selling our flowers through a U-Pick experience. These sales channels, while uniquely different in their value that they provide, they were all a means to the same end. They allowed us to move the flowers that we had so we could reach our ultimate goal of creating a profitable flower farm that could serve as my full-time income. If you're planning on flower farming this coming year, I think one of the best things that you can do for your business is to gain clarity around the sort of value that you want to provide to your community through your flowers, and then decide on how you'll deliver that value. In the beginning, you may not know which sales channel will work best for you. You're likely going to have to give a few a try and really get a feel for how they work for you. That's simply what we've done over the years. What we too often forget is that different sales channels require different types of work. And when you can find a sales channel that plays to your unique strengths as an individual, that's what helps businesses from feeling like so much work. Now, to help get your gears turning as you plan for the upcoming season, I thought I'd briefly share what I perceive to be advantages and disadvantages to some of the most popular sales channels. And I hope to share a few sales channels that you may not have even thought of, so that I can really drive home my point that there's no limit to the value that you can create when it comes to cut flowers. As I said earlier, selling through a farm stand was my introduction into selling cut flowers. Broadly speaking, the sales channel provides value as it's a convenient, hassle-free way for people to buy flowers. As a flower farmer, what I really enjoyed about this avenue was that it was a simple, low-risk way for me to sort of dip my toes into sales. When I was just starting out and a little unsure of the availability of the flowers I would have from week to week, I loved how the stand gave me some flexibility. I could stock the stand when I had flowers, and I could easily take off weeks when I didn't. To me, the flower stand felt very low pressure because I wasn't committing certain flowers to specific customers. Everything was sold on a first come, first served basis, and when I ran out, that was it. Especially in my early years when I didn't have an established customer base, the flower stand was a way for me to get my product in front of people who may not have known who I was. These customers were customers of opportunity that drove past my stand and decided to stop. Now, the downside to this sales outlet was that because I was operating the flower stand based on the honor system, it was easy for dishonest customers to steal my product. Now, this did happen occasionally, and it felt really defeating because I was putting in work to create something which I was getting no compensation for. Also, another downside was that my sales were more inconsistent with this sales method. This can be a disadvantage, especially if you're needing to hit a specific revenue goal each week. Now, to be clear, the inconsistencies were largely due to my own inexperience at the time. Remember, I was new to selling flowers, and so I wasn't regularly stocking my stand on a fixed schedule, nor was I communicating when flowers would be available to the small audience I had on social media. For a farm stand to be successful, you have to rise above the mindset of, if I put out flowers, someone will buy them. Instead, you really have to put in work into letting people know exactly what they can expect when they visit your flower stand. As I gained experience growing flowers, my experience in selling flowers grew as well. And for a brief time, I transitioned into selling my flowers wholesale to local florists. I was well aware that selling wholesale meant selling my flowers at a lower price point, but I really loved the idea of selling a larger volume of blooms through fewer customers. At the time I was doing this, flower farming was still my side hustle. I was working a normal full-time job as I was trying to get my business off the ground, and so communicating with fewer customers really appealed to me. What's more, working with local florists meant that they were, more receptive to my delivery hours. I often delivered my buckets of flowers to them early in the morning before I had to be at work for the day. It's a little harder, to find an appropriate delivery window if you're trying to deliver retail bouquets to your customers, because they probably don't want their flowers delivered at 6:30 in the morning. I loved the stability that I felt selling to a local florist. While it was normal for their orders to fluctuate from week to week, I had one florist in particular who had a standing weekly order with me, which meant that I could always guarantee selling that minimum number of flowers to her. Now, sure, she may have added to her order if she was doing more weddings that week or whatnot, but I could more easily project what I was going to make every month based off of those standing orders. Beyond the lower price point, the most notable disadvantage for me selling wholesale to florists was that I noticed myself underselling my blooms out of fear that I wouldn't have enough to fill an order. You see, the florists I supplied often ordered 2 weeks in advance of the events that they had. Predicting the number of bunches that I'd have available of specific flowers in specific colors, that proved challenging, especially as I was just starting out. Rather than overestimate the quantities that I'd have available, I preferred to leave myself a small buffer. In my mind, I felt it would be better for our relationship if I delivered on what I underpromised, rather than overpromise and show up to their shop empty-handed. When you do that, you're putting your florist customer in a bind and forcing her to have to source flowers on a very limited deadline. Overall, that buffer helped me strengthen my working relationship with my florist customers, but did I leave money in the field? Well, yes, I did. I think it's important to be aware too that as a small grower, you may not be able to meet the sometimes very specific needs of a florist. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Florists will usually buy from multiple sources anyway, but don't expect that just because a florist needs pink for an upcoming wedding, that she's going to be able to source that from you. There's a big difference, especially when you're designing for a very specific client, between, colors like light pink, blush, apricot, coral. As a small grower, you may not have all those variations growing in your field. One last point worth mentioning is that florists have a working knowledge of the floral industry, and they expect a certain quality and standard, so you really have to be on your game when it comes to the types of flowers that you supply them. In my opinion, there's a little less flexibility with the blooms that you're able to sell. For example, when I was selling sunflower bunches on our farm stand, I could get away with selling some blooms that were more open. I could pair those more open blooms with some still tightly closed sunflower blooms,
And customers were happy because even though some blooms within the bunch lasted longer than others, overall the sunflower bunch had a nice vase life. My florist, however, that wanted a weekly supply of sunflowers, they expected a more tightly closed sunflower for all their stems. In my experience, there was just stricter parameters around what was acceptable versus what wasn't. The florist experience was great for me because through it I learned how to deliver a promise of flowers to a specific customer. And after my brief stint in wholesale, I took that skill and I finally launched a flower subscription program for my flower farm. Flower subscriptions, or CSAs, can be accomplished in any number of ways. Usually a customer pays in advance for a set number of bouquets, which they then receive weekly or monthly throughout your growing season. Capturing sales once at the start of a subscription is convenient for customers who like the consistency of weekly flowers, but they don't want to have to think about buying them every single week. They pay once and enjoy fresh flowers all season long. What I love most about operating as a CSA model is that it separates the selling and growing portions that come with selling cut flowers. When you're in the thick of your growing season, you quickly realize how much there is to do. Growing and maintaining a flower crop can require a lot of your time and attention. And because you have a perishable product, you can't ignore the marketing and selling side of your business. But when you pre-sell your flowers ahead of the growing season, you eliminate the need to do these two tasks, growing and marketing, at the same time. There's a sort of relief that comes from knowing that during your busiest times of the season, you can focus on one task rather than trying to juggle multiple. Now, like with selling to florists, with a CSA, you're pre-selling your product. So yes, there's a little bit of stress that comes with making sure that you'll actually have product available when you say you're going to. But what I enjoy about the CSA model is that I do surprisingly have more flexibility. You see, with my CSA customers, I'm not selling or promising them specific flowers each week. Instead, my focus is on providing them one beautiful bouquet. So weeks where I have lots of sunflowers blooming in my fields, you can bet that my weekly CSA bouquets have more sunflowers in them to make use of what is blooming at the time. Also, since my subscription customers, prepay for a specific number of bouquets, I find that I often sell more to them in a single season. Sure, with the farm stand, I eventually grew to have loyal customers that bought from me on a consistent basis. But when the weather wasn't that great, for instance, if it was rainy and gray, even my most loyal customers were inclined to take a week off. And I don't blame them. I probably would do the same thing. But with the CSA, the number of bouquets that I made from week to week, that's consistent, independent of the weather or other variables. Selling your flowers through a subscription program can be a great way for your flower farm to have consistent retail sales throughout your growing season. My biggest encouragement before you dive into it, though, is that you consider the entire process of how your CSA will work, start to finish. If you're not careful, there's a lot of small, unaccounted for tasks that can eat away at the profits of your program. So maybe streamline your communications with your customers by having FAQs on your website. If you're offering delivery, limit your route to specific areas so that you're efficient even when on the road, or have clear pickup process so that your customers know what's going on even if you're not physically at your pickup spot. If your goal is to make consistent retail sales, but you don't want the commitment of having a set number of bouquets each week, then perhaps a farmer's market will be more appropriate for your flower farm. Now, to be fair, while I have sold at various pop-up markets throughout our growing seasons, I have never fully committed to a true farmer's market, so I can't speak to all aspects of the process. But in my experience, markets can be a great opportunity to get in front of new customers. And if you're someone that is very extroverted and enjoys social situations, getting to actually see your customers may feel more personal to you than selling at a roadside farm stand. Understand that there is more work involved when you're the one traveling to your customers each week, versus your customers traveling to you. With just the few pop-ups that we've done over the years, I know firsthand that it takes a lot of work to pack up my car with the tent that I use for our booth, with the various signs and the tables and the random elements of our setup, not to mention, finding room for the actual flowers that I intend to sell. Beyond just the time it takes you to travel to the market, there's also the time that goes into the setup and the takedown of your booth. And then there's a time that you or someone from your flower farm is actually sitting there, serving the customers that buy from you. It can be a lot, especially if you're doing it week after week or weekend after weekend, depending on what day of the week the market is held. It's worth noting too, what sort of other vendors will be a part of the specific market that you choose. Are there already a lot of flower farmers selling flowers there? Then maybe you'll have to be more intentional in how you stand out from the others. Or are there no flower farmers there? And in that case, maybe you'll find yourself serving an underserved market, which could lead to all sorts of possibilities. So with a lot of the sales channels that I've already mentioned, the value for your customer is found one way or another in having fresh cut flowers. There are, however, customers that value the experience over the product itself, and that's why you-pick experiences or other types of in-person workshops can be another way to sell your flowers. Over the years, I've grown to love the you-pick sales channel as it removes the need for me to cut every single stem that we sell. In a lot of ways, I'm delegating the harvesting portion of my workload to customers who desire that sort of experience. Now, does that mean that there's less work to be done when you operate as a you-pick farm? Well, not exactly. With the you-pick sales channel, it's not that I have less work to do, it's more so that I have different work to do. With you-picks in particular, I spend much more time maintaining our garden, making sure it's not only safe for our visitors, but that it's kept looking its best. I definitely weed more heavily when I'm hosting a you-pick farm, and I'm more intentional about turning over spent beds. In short, I'm more heavily focused on the appearance of my garden, not just its production. If you're not keen on having guests in your garden, and the thought of having other people cut from the plants that you so lovingly nurture, if that gives you anxiety, you-pick may not be the best fit for your flower farm. I will say that in bringing people to the sort of heart of your flower farm, the actual place where you grow flowers, it's important for you to have strong boundaries. Boundaries around when you are or are not open, boundaries around which plants guests are allowed to cut from, and boundaries around how much each guest is permitted to cut. Okay, as we've been going along, it's sort of interesting to compare and contrast all these sales channels, because you can see that for everything your customer gains with each channel, there's usually a less important element that they're willing to give up. With you-picks, customers gain that unique experience. However, they typically miss out on the design skills that you personally have to offer. And that's exactly the value that you bring to the table when you position yourself as a farmer florist. Event, floral, and wedding design can be a great way for even the smallest of flower farms to earn a high price point from their flowers. When you compare and contrast all the various sales channels, the markup on event florals is usually one of the highest. But be careful, offering full-service weddings is by no means a get-rich-quick type of thing. While you're creating a lot of added value for your customers, through design work, you're essentially taking on two roles, that of the farmer growing the flowers and that of the florist designing with them. And so you need to charge accordingly for your time. Since your customers are making a significantly larger investment with you, not just a one-off bouquet sale, they will demand much more of your time. You'll have to put much more effort into your communication with them to ensure their satisfaction through the entire process. Now, before we wrap this video up, I do want to share one more sales channel that you likely hadn't considered before, and that is content creation. I think this sales channel in particular proves the point that I've been trying to make this entire video, and that is the value that you provide as a flower farmer is not found strictly through the sales of your physical product, of your flowers. Now, content creation can be any number of ways that you package your knowledge or your experience. You can create informative vlogs, entertaining YouTube videos. You can focus more on short form content like on TikTok, or you can start a podcast. The possibilities are numerous. The biggest advantage to creating content around your flower farm is that there's low overhead. The value you're providing is not coming from the direct sale of your physical flowers, so for smaller farms that don't have the means to grow on a large scale, you can still reach a large audience, make a large impact, and consequently build a large profit from that. As someone that uses content creation as a sales channel for my flower farm, you're watching this YouTube video right now, I will tell you that being a content creator takes a lot of time and effort. It's sort of like the farmer florist model where you're taking on 2 roles at once. For every 15 to 20 minute video that you see here on my channel, there's hours of preparation and filming and editing that you don't see. And when you do create content, you're not directly compensated for the time and effort that you put into the process. Content creation, in most cases, is truly something that you commit to for the long haul. I mean, it has the ability to grow and compound into something significant, but it takes time to build. Even for us, despite growing what I feel like is an amazing community of flower growers here on this platform, the money that I earn solely from content creation is not enough, to keep the lights on. I believe in the long haul that it has the possibility to turn into something more significant, and so I'm willing to keep putting in the work. But content creation as a whole, is not a sales channel that will give you that immediate gratification. By now in this video, we have truly covered a lot. So if you've gotten this far, please know that I appreciate you. My goal for creating this video was really to leave you inspired and to hopefully drive home the point that it is not too late for you to start the flower farm of your dreams. When you stop trying to replicate what everyone else is doing and instead forge your own path that provides value to a market that is not currently being served, well, that's a simple formula of ensuring your success within any local community. If you'd like more help on narrowing in on the unique value proposition that your flower farm can provide, I've actually included 2 business books linked in the description box below that I absolutely love and I think are great reads on this topic. One more thing before you go, if you have enjoyed the content in this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could give this video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. It really does help small channels like ours. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye guys.